Okay, family, this is Cable Game 93 coming at you with another midday segment, or commonly known as midday grind segment. And I just want to take this opportunity just to share a little bit, actually a continuation from what took place yesterday. As y'all know, yesterday I had to hit that crawl space, which is common when it comes to the cable game. But I also explained while I was in there that I still ain't used to it, even after 15 years of dealing with being in and out of crawl spaces. And for a minute I thought about it. I'm like, well, that's something that that you have to do, even though you want to do it, but you still continue to grind right through it. And that's because, first and foremost, to me, on the surface, from a surface perspective, it's about getting to the bag. I know I'm not going to allow the crawl space to stop me from feeding my family. That's one thing. But secondly, internally, first and foremost, there's another situation that's going on. Because the mind, once again, is the only thing that stops us from doing anything that we believe we have to do or that we want to do. And your mind can also be 1 minute your best friend and next minute your worst enemy. And that common phrase that says the same thing that makes you laugh, make you cry. And to me, that's how the mind is. The mind represents that same dynamic. The same thing that makes you laugh, makes you cry. But it's not anything external. It's whatever's going on with your spiritual reality on the inside that determines whether or not you're up and you're down. So I use that analogy of going in and out of the crawl spaces as one example of how, it's mind over matter. It's like, I'm not going to let that particular situation stop me from getting to the bag. And y'all know I'm a great proponent of getting to that bag, period, point blank. But first and foremost, before that natural bag or financial bag, there's always the spiritual bag. There's always being able to enjoy the peace of God, irregardless of what circumstance you may find yourself in. And I just use that crawl space as an example of the fact that how you can do something for 15 years, don't like it, but still do it because it's a mind over matter. Still do it because it's an old saying. Well, it's something that I heard Denzel say in one of his movies. Denzel said you got to do what you have to do until you can do what you want to do. So at the end of the day, that's one of them situations. You do what you have to do until you can do what you want to do. And I just wanted to use that crawl space because it came to me like that crawl space is still challenging. And I know I'm not the only one that has to deal with challenges on a regular basis, but challenges don't have to decapitate us. Challenges don't have to hinder us from, first and foremost, dealing with, living life on life terms in misery. See what I'm saying? And one thing that it does remind me of, it reminds me of the conversation that Paul had with God in the scriptures, where Paul had a thorn in his flesh and he wanted God to remove it. And at the end of the day, God told him no. So what happens when God tells you no? Because he tells all of us no. We get told no in so many different situations throughout our life. But because you get told no, that don't necessarily mean you stop. See, that's what I want to focus on. I also want to focus on the fact that just because you get told no, just because you got a thorn, don't allow your thorn to be a tree. Don't allow your molehill to be a mountain. These things, you can have molehills, you can have thorns and still be effective. See, I just wanted to focus on that because, even from my Bible scholars, if you look at that scenario, it was a thorn. It was a splinter. That's what he used. It was a splinter. Just like when we get a splinter in our toe, in our foot, in our finger, it's just a splinter. It's not the end of the world. So whatever it is that we have, whatever your thorn may be, and to me, my thorn is my mind. And I'm just going to keep it real because, like I said, the same thing that makes me laugh, that brings me to places of happiness from time to time, is also the same thing that makes me cry. So I need to be able to identify what the purpose of the mind is and keep the mind in its place and not allow it to dictate my salvation. See, at the end of the day, the motivator in me is the only consistent thing inside my being. Everything else is temporary. Everything else has a high and a low. So therefore, my goal is to stay focused on the inner motivator, family, to not allow that thorn to become a tree, because that's all it is. And every last one of us have thorns, whether you acknowledge them as your mind, whether it's a certain person, whether it's a certain place, whether it's a certain situation, it's still a thorn. It should not be given the freedom to dictate how you have to shape your reality. It should not be able to keep you in captivity. It's just a thorn. So at the end of the day, when that thorn shows up, it just allows divinity, first and foremost, to overshadow our humanity. It just allows us to realize that it's in them situations where God becomes real to us. Because that's all it was with Paul. When Paul asked God to take the thorn away from him, God was like, no, because that allows me to be God to you. That allows you to realize that you're human. And that you need to first and foremost remain submissive to your inner motivator, which is me. Because I'm the one that's going to allow your peace to reign. So as human beings, even though I know we are more than overcomers, even though I know no weapon formed against us shall prosper, but at the end of the day, we all still have thorns. And it's with those thorns, it's with those thorns that God is able to be God. And like I said, I'm not going to leave the non-religious side of the equation. Not going to leave those that are not in the Christian faith. Your thorn, once again, still, whether you classify it as a thorn, as a problem, or whatever it is, it still can be overcome by your inner motivator. It still can be overcome by your higher self. It still can be overcome by, first and foremost, that side of you that refuses to lay down, irregardless of what the circumstances may say. So like I said, family, I just wanted to share this little midday grind segment. So we can go ahead first and foremost and realize that no matter which situation we find ourselves in, yesterday to me, it was that crawl space. The epitome of uncomfortability. No matter what situation we find ourselves in, it's the situation that we got going on inside of us that determines the outcome. Not the situation itself, but our inner reality determines how well we prosper and how we show up in each moment. But on that note, family, I just like to leave you. And like I said, I'll holler back at you later once I get through a few jobs, maybe with a final thought, or maybe just with some words of wisdom, or maybe just with an issue, a problem, whatever the case may be. I just like to continue to keep the dialogue going, family. And I would like to encourage each and every one of y'all to keep pressing. It's possible. There's nothing impossible for the inner motivator. The hater and relator, they get stagnated all the time. But the motivator, it ain't no stopping him. So that's who I encourage each and every one of us to identify with that inner motivator. Later.